trying to stay strong. Doctors and paperwork, so much to face. But here you found a safer place. You're not alone, we're standing by your side, helping you through every twist in the ride. With knowledge, care, and a voice that's true, the Disability Digest is here for you. We've walked the path, we've heard the fight, we know the pain that hides from sight. But every story matters, every win is real. Together we rise, together we heal. You're not alone, we're standing by your side, helping you through every twist in the ride. With knowledge, care, and a voice that's true, the Disability Digest.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in today's live session. So, if you're struggling to get approved for Social Security disability or worried about losing your benefits once you have them, well, you're not alone. We all know getting approved, staying approved, it takes more than just filling out forms. It's about understanding what disability examiners and judges are really looking for. So it's about avoiding costly mistakes and knowing how to protect your benefits long term. So today I am proud to introduce that we are being joined by Brian Tarian, founder of the Disability Digest. We also have Philip Price, owner of one of the Facebook group, a very supportive Facebook group that helps people navigate the disability process. Welcome, Philip. And of course, attorney James Mitchell Brown. He's here to help us answer any questions about how to get approved and how to stay approved. And he will help clarify, information about what judges and disability examiners look for and how you can strengthen your claim or appeal. So, Jim, thank you so much for being here today. And
Glad to be here.
glad that you're here. Brian would give us a bit more introduction about Attorney James Brown.
Thank you, Nadine, Philip. Glad to have you with us. And Jim, it's always a pleasure. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining the show. The noise in the background is they come by and do the lawn when we go live. It's just like clockwork, so they won't be here long. So for those of you that are not familiar with Attorney James Mitchell Brown, we refer to him as the industry expert, and I want to explain why. Jim has been representing Social Security disability claimants or individuals in need of their disability benefits for 52 years. I get that number right this time, Jim?
You've got it right.
I want to repeat, 52 years. I mean, 52 years doing anything, it's impressive, let alone this. But not only that, in representing, Jim is definitely positioned himself and well-deserved as an industry expert. And he has been involved in government issues with Congress, testifying for Social Security on issues pertaining to disability benefits. So some of the things that go on out there, you can thank Attorney Brown for. And so in the industry that we work in for disability representatives, another thing that stands out for me about Jim is we have these conferences that we go to do continuing education, knowledge, ethics, all that stuff, so we can effectively help you folks get approved. And one of the keynote speakers at these events is none other than Attorney James Mitchell Brown. So one other thing I want to share with you for folks out there, if you are like trying to get approved and here at the Disability Digest, we have courses that help you do that. Major contributor, Attorney Brown. If you're already approved, Attorney Brown has helped us put together a How to Survive Your Continuing Disability Review course, one of our most popular courses. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for joining. And today's event, I am excited about. I just want to kind of preface this whole topic of what Social Security considers to be a qualifying disability.
Brian, let me interrupt you 1 second.
Yeah.
You made a big deal of my 52 years. A congresswoman once asked me, why does anybody want to take the pain of representing people in Social Security cases? And I told her something that a lot of people I know who represent claimants say, the best part of it is the hugs. When you get a hug after winning a case, that's why we keep doing it. That makes it worthwhile. So that's why I put up with Social Security for 52 years.
Amen to that. Yeah. No, I can relate. That's one of the things that has kept me in the game, and then working with great people that I do. But for those of you listening out there, why this is important to information to get approved and stay approved is this. On an average year, 1.9 million people apply for their Social Security disability benefits. About 487,000 get approved on their application. That's a massive gap. And it's typically not because they don't medically qualify. It's just a lot of this has to do with communication, in my perspective. Then once somebody is approved, on an average year, about 144,000 people will lose their benefit, in large part because of a review. They don't do what they need to do. So you're going to understand some real key information today that will help you get approved and stay approved from our expert. All right, you ready to go, Jim?
I'm ready. I should add in that the Government Accounting Office said 35% of the people eligible for disability never receive it. So that's a huge number right there. And hopefully today we're going to help some of the people who deserve it figure out how to get their benefits.
Oh, that's powerful. Not good news, but all right. So let's start with a high-end question. What does Social Security mean by a disability, like a qualifying disability?
Well, they have a 5-step of a process that they first look at. And the first step has to be you have to not be working. And every month somebody calls me up and says, I'm working, but I'll stop as soon as I get my Social Security. It doesn't work that way. It should. In federal workers' comp or federal retirement, you can do that. In the VA, you can do that. But on Social Security, you have to not be working to get Social Security disability. By not working, that means earning less than $1,620 per month. So you can be working a part-time job. The closer you are to that 1620, the less likely you are to get disability. You can be making $1,600 a month, and Social Security is going to say, well, you could probably make $1,625 a month. So don't get close. The other thing they look at is how many hours a week are you working? If you're working 40 hours a week and making $1,600 a month, they're going to say you're capable of making more. You could get a different job that would put you over that 1620 level. So they look at hours you work as well as the amount of money. The next thing they look at is, do you have a severe impairment? You cannot be working. One lady came to me and said she had 3 back surgeries. It looked good until I got her medical records and saw she'd had 3 skin tags removed from her back. So that wasn't a severe impairment. So you have to have something severe that keeps you from working. Now, I've had clients with severe impairments to one extremity. Social Security is going to say, why can't you do a job with the other 3 extremities? What if it's to your arm? Why can't you do a job using the other arm and foot pedals? So you have to have a severe impairment that's going to affect your ability to do work. The next thing is, do you have an impairment that equals the listings? That means they have a list of medical conditions. And with those medical conditions, if your severity is so great that it fits completely into their category, you win automatically, you don't go further. One of the ones I look for that's an obscure listing is if you've had heart surgery and still have chest pains that last 4 minutes, you meet the listings, you win. So anybody I have that has heart surgery, I ask if they still have chest pains and how long they last. Most people don't know how long they last. So I tell them to time them. And if they're lasting over 4 minutes, I make sure they tell their doctor. The doctor's not there to time the chest pains, but if it's in the medical records, that's good enough. The next thing you have to prove is that they can't do the work they were doing in the past. Social Security looks at the work you were doing in the last 5 years. This morning, I had a hearing for somebody's past work was as a forklift driver and as a cook. And the vocational witness said if he was lifting 50 pounds or more, and now he's limited to lifting 10 pounds, he can't do either of his past jobs. So we have to prove you can't do your past work. And then we have to prove that there's no other work that you can do. For workers' comp, for long-term disability, for some federal employment disabilities, you just have to prove you can't do the job you were doing. For Social Security, you have to prove there's no other work you can do. So the fact that you can't go back to what you're doing isn't enough. You have to prove more than that. Mm-hmm. And that's what Social Security is looking at to determine if you reach their level of disability.
So, Jim, if somebody is following along with us, we've covered the 5 steps and they look in their online portal. Is there any correlation between the steps that you just communicated and what they're evaluating in the portal?
What they're evaluating in what?
So if somebody looks at their online My Social Security account and it provides the steps 1 through 5, does it any way connect to what you just communicated?
It can, but proving there's no work you can do is where it gets difficult. If you're age 50 and over, it becomes easier because it's harder to learn a new job once you get older. Okay. If you're 35 years old, you can be taught to do a lot of different jobs. If you're 55 years old, it becomes more difficult to learn to do a different job and to get one. They don't look at can you get a job, but once you get over age 50, each year you're over age 50, it becomes easier to get disability. One of the things, Social Security lists a lot of diagnoses that make you eligible for disability. A lot of people look at those diagnoses and say, I have a herniated disc, so I can get disability. A diagnosis is not a disability. A diagnosis, there are people who have a lot of diagnoses in that list who are still working full time. So the diagnosis is just something someone's received disability for. You have to prove what that diagnosis does that affects your ability to return to work.
So that's the key point right there. Let's zero in on this a little bit because this is where most get confused. And back to the 35% that you said that don't get benefits, I expect it's in large part because of the disconnect between communicating their condition and the limitation associated with why they can't work, right?
Right. Now, Social Security is looking at your age, your education, the work you've done in the past, and your disability. Mm-hmm. My client this morning dropped out of school at age 16 when he finished the 8th grade. He was poorly educated, which meant there were a lot of jobs that he couldn't learn to do. So the fact that his education was poor helped him in the disability realm because he couldn't learn to run a computer. There are a lot of things he couldn't do. His work had all been unskilled. So he didn't have skills that transferred into other types of employment.
Mm-hmm.
So they look at what did you do if you were working in an office running a word processor, you have skills that could transfer into other types of employment. If you're working in a warehouse, lifting 50-pound boxes and moving them from one skid to another, you don't have skills that transfer to other types of employment.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking at that. But now you have to show that I have a herniated disc. That's something that's in the listing of impairments.
Yeah.
What does that herniated disc do to you? It depends on the severity of it. If your herniated disc keeps you from lifting more than 5 pounds, that takes away even sedentary work. If the herniated disc makes you so uncomfortable that you can't sit in one position for more than 15 minutes at a time before you have to change. If the doctor says you can't stand more than 2 hours out of 8, and you can't sit more than 2 hours out of 8, and you're going to be lying down a good portion of the day, you're unemployable.
Yes.
So how does that diagnosis affect your ability to do work? That's where the disability comes in. Putting a tag on something, you can say, in fact, I had a client a couple of weeks ago who was denied disability. He wrote on his application that he had a stroke. He didn't talk about what that stroke did to him. And with this shutdown, the people at Social Security and with this administration, they have short time limits to make decisions. So, given those shorter time limits, nobody bothered to find out that he was paralyzed on one side. He was denied because all he said was he had a stroke. He didn't put on his application that he was paralyzed on one stroke or what the limitations of that stroke were.
Mm-hmm.
We put all of that on his reconsideration. They also hadn't gotten all of his medical evidence. So I got the medical evidence we needed to attach to the reconsideration. It took an extra 5 weeks before I filed the appeal, but it's going to make that appeal a win.
Yeah, that's strong. So the messaging here for everybody is it's not just the diagnoses, it's the limitations associated with it. But not only that, they need to be communicated, just like this situation right here, so that Social Security can clearly understand these. This is good. So I want to move on about the definition of, well, Social Security has actually got, in my opinion, a higher threshold for approval than other programs, short-term, long-term disability, veterans benefits, et cetera. And some people, I expect this has happened to you, I'll use a veteran, for example. They come with a 100% rating, their P&T, and so they're getting those benefits, which gives them some false sense of security, unfortunately, that when they come to the disability system for Social Security, it's not the same. So can you speak to that? Like, what is the general difference between Social Security and the other programs?
There's over 100 different definitions of disability in America.
Ah,
So everybody has their own. You can be 100% disabled on the VA and still be working full time. There are a lot of postal workers who are 100% disabled.
mm-hmm.
There was a lawyer on the West Coast who was representing people on Social Security claims who was 100% VA disabled. So
Mm-hmm.
the definition is different. You can be 100% disabled on federal employees' retirement system and still be doing a minimal amount of work. On Social Security, they have set up their standard. The standards aren't fair. So I'm not defending the standards, and I have spent a lot of hours in Washington trying to change the standards. Back in the late 80s, the Arthritis Foundation was asked to nominate someone to be on the Social Security Advisory Board. The heads of the board thought they were going to nominate a rheumatologist to help with their arthritis listings. They instead asked me to be on the board, and the board refused to accept me. So the fact that they could have had somebody who understood what was going on in the system made it something that they weren't going to accept.
Mm-hmm.
I have said many times when I've testified that if they were to take 10 Social Security judges, 10 people who work in the Department of Disability Determination, where they make the initial and reconsideration decisions, 10 people from the local offices, and 10 representatives, and get us all together to talk about how to fix the system, and told us, write the 10 things you think should be done first to make the system better. 8 of the 10 things would be the same on every list. But they're not interested in getting information from people who know what's going on. So we have a system that's in a quagmire.
Yeah.
Back to your question, though, there are a lot of different definitions of disability. And just because you're getting permanent and total disability from workers' comp, almost every state has its own definition of what permanent and total is. Some states almost never give permanent and total, and they get the claim settled instead.
Mm-hmm.
Other states, it's easier to get permanent and total because the standards are easier. But permanent and total in workers' comp is more related to the job you were doing than to any other jobs. In Social Security, there's no such thing as permanent and total. There is if you're blind, there is if you're a quadriplegic, there is if your IQ is below 65. But in reality, in Social Security, until you're age 60, they're going to review you every 3 years to see if you're still disabled and to see if you meet their criteria for disability. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, everybody should know the government is talking about taking away the age requirement, which would mean a 59-year-old could be treated the same as a 35-year-old. But it's a different standard, and it's their standard. It's not a fair standard, but it's the burden you have to meet to get disability.
Yeah, and you can get approved. So, Jim, I want to go back to talking about some conditions so that we can address, again, a little deeper dive in some of the common questions that people have. So I'm going to take a condition like cancer. And my question about that, somebody has cancer, it's a listing, right? So if they meet the listing, then they get approved. But what I would like to hear from you is some of the nuances for a condition like cancer. Like some people that have cancer could meet the listing. Some people that have cancer, they could be treated and out, right? So maybe they could get a closed period. So help us better understand the cancer and the aspects of getting approved.
Or you might have a course of treatment that doesn't last 12 months and you're back to work. So the fact that you have the word cancer doesn't mean that you're going to get disability. And I'm going to be giving a talk soon to a cancer organization on how to get disability with cancer, but it also includes when you're not disabled. If you're a man with prostate cancer, it has to be extremely severe before you would get disability.
Mm-hmm.
Lung cancer used to almost automatically be a winner. Now it's one of the most treatable kinds of cancer. The question is, what is that cancer doing to you? What kind of treatment do you get? And what is that treatment doing to you? If I have one friend who had to get chemo twice a week for about 18 months.
Right.
Every time he got that chemo, he was in bed for 24 to 48 hours, and then he'd be ready for another round of it. So he couldn't work because of the side effects of the chemo. Yes, he had cancer, but it was the treatment that was causing him to be unable to work.
Mm-hmm.
If he didn't get the treatment, he would have died.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a condition that's going to result in death, then you get disability. But all cancers don't result in death. You have to look at the diagnosis and the type of treatment. Breast cancer used to always be fatal, almost always. Now, depending when it's caught, it can be very treatable. There are women who have breast cancer who miss 3 days from work to get the treatment they need to get it started, and then maybe miss another 10 days for radiation.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to be off work for 12 consecutive months.
That's
So
encouraging.
it again becomes, what is the diagnosis and why is that diagnosis disabling?
Mm-hmm. All right. Good point. So in theory, somebody even with a stage 4 cancer that can still function and is not in an intense treatment could be out working, could not qualify for disability benefits just because it's at stage 4. Is that correct?
That's correct. It again depends on what your past work was too.
Okay.
If your past work was yours or mine, we'd be more likely to be able to work than if our past work was working in a warehouse.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's move on to like some musculoskeletal ones, which are also common: chronic pain, arthritis, injuries, um, and sometimes these are very hard to prove. Um, maybe there's not enough imaging, or the treatment records are inconsistent, or somebody went to pain management and they didn't like it and they didn't continue. So what are some of the keys for conditions that fall into this category for individuals to get approved?
Well, the easiest one of this is if the claimant is on a walker that is prescribed by the physician. If
Mhm.
you're using a walker physician prescribed, there's almost no work that you can do.
Okay.
Um, if all of your past relevant work was a sit down job, that walker isn't going to prohibit you from working, other than your breaks may have to be longer, and that's an accommodation.
Okay.
If you're going to go to the bathroom, 15 minutes may not be long enough. So you may need an accommodation that an employer may not provide. But let's say you have the typical backache with arthritis in both hands. It again depends on how severe it is. I had a client recently whose arthritis is so bad that 10 fingers go in 10 different directions.
Ooh.
I mean, this person can't even wear gloves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's no use of the hands. His past work was lighter work, but if you can't use your hands, you eliminate a lot of your past relevant work. It then becomes, what else can he do? And this person was very skilled, but a lot of skilled work requires use of a computer, and he couldn't use a computer. The judge wanted to know about voice recognition. Well, couldn't you talk to your computer? And he could talk to the computer, except that would be disturbing to coworkers. And if you were disturbing coworkers, that becomes another problem. The other issue with this person was because of his impairment, he had severe depression.
Okay.
And which was documented by a therapist. We add the depression into the bad hands, and there was nothing he could do. Usually, if it's just an injury to the hands, it's not enough, but you usually don't have hand injuries that are that bad. I have clients who come to me with bilateral carpal tunnel who are refusing surgery. If you're refusing a back surgery, that's legitimate. That's if you're afraid to have back surgery, that's a legitimate fear. If you're refusing to have carpal tunnel surgery, a judge can say, this is something that's curable, and they're refusing to go through the procedure.
Good, good. Before we move on, Jim, Nadine, I just want to take a quick time out for advising those out there that have questions, how they'll be able to participate in the FAQ in a moment.
Yeah, sure. So later in the show, we are going to have a Q&A portion of this. So you can either start sending your questions in the comment right now. I'll take note of them and I'm going to ask those questions live and answer them live. Or you can join us via Zoom. I'll be posting a link so that you would be able to personally ask your questions and get them answered by our experts.
Yes, yes. Okay, Jim, next is brain health type conditions, mental health, depression, anxiety, PTSD, invisible conditions that people have. Oftentimes very, very challenging. I know you've got an industry expert of your own that you speak highly of, but for those that have these, I'm also wondering if there's some nuances for those that are over 50, under 50 with these conditions. Like, what is it that, what are some of the keys to getting through and getting cases like these approved?
But there's someone at Cleveland Clinic who's doing research now because she found there's never been a book written to show that if you have a chronic disease or if you suddenly stop working because of an injury, you're almost sure to have anxiety and depression. It's a given, and it's known, but it's never been scientifically researched and published. So she's doing that. But
Wow.
If all of a sudden you're stopping working because you have MS or Parkinson's or you're in an accident, there's first of all some studies that show the sooner you get mental health therapy, the better you respond to the treatment for your physical injuries.
Wow.
So now that's not a doctor speaking, but the study was never completed because they ran out of money for it, but it was really making great progress. I like to see a person who's getting that therapy when they need it. And a lot of people do. I've had a lot of spouses so happy that their spouse is getting some mental health therapy, because when you sit around the house, all you get to do is think about how bad you feel.
Yeah.
On the mental health side of the case, though, if that's all it is mental health, you have to show that you're unable to take care of your own needs. Whether I had one psychiatrist who testified at Social Security who felt if you lived alone, you could take care of your own needs. And if you lived with someone, you could get along with other people. So therefore, nobody could get disability in his mind. I had a client show up who probably hadn't taken a shower in 3 months, and she was wearing some striped stretch pants that were about 4 sizes too small, and a plaid flannel shirt that was also about 3 sizes too small, and a knit hat. And when she took it off and rubbed her head, you could see how greasy her hair was. And he looks at me and says, "You got me on this one." But taking care of yourself means needing a reminder to take your medicine. A lot of people use a reminder of setting the alarm on their phone, of having somebody tell you to take it, wearing the same clothes for a few days in a row, not showering very often. Making skimping. Go ahead.
I have a question on this one. I understand if I understand correctly, what you're saying is for somebody with mental health, any of these conditions, the premise is they need to be in a situation where they cannot take care of themselves. Okay, that's it. If they have an RFC from treating physician that says that they would miss on average 3 or more days of work a month, puts them in a they're not employable. What about a situation like that where they're not as severe, but they're not employable?
The mental health professionals' office records have to back that up. And they back it up by saying they don't shower often, they forget to take their medicine. Forgetting to take your medicine is a common occurrence with a mental health problem.
Got it.
Not eating regularly.
Okay.
Not cleaning the house. The next criterion that is unable to get along with others. If you live alone, or if the people you live with, you're constantly argumentative with them, or you're complaining about them. If you were in a work setting, you wouldn't be able to get along with coworkers because of that. Those are things they look at, but it again needs to be in the professional's records. Patient came in today and said had a fight with wife and daughter. Things like that are backed up by medical records.
Okay. Now I'm going to keep pushing on this one because I mean this is an area where we see a lot of members come here and for help. So if there are like 2, maybe 3 questions that you would ask somebody that came to you, that is a 47-year-old person that has a just mental health conditions. What are some of the questions that you would ask them to see if if they are a viable candidate?
The first question is, are you seeing a mental health professional? It's amazing how many people are getting their mental health care from a family doctor.
Oh boy.
Which is really just getting pills.
Yeah.
And Social Security isn't going to buy that your depression or your anxiety or your PTSD is severe enough if it's just being treated by a family doctor. I never send somebody to the mental health professional myself. I always ask the person to ask their doctor to send them.
Oh, like a referral?
The referral. I want the referral to the mental health professional to come from a doctor my client is already seeing.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't want the record to say that referred by their lawyer.
Yeah.
So your doctor will be usually happy to send you to someone because then you're not telling them all your problems.
Yeah.
Second thing I would ask them is, how much are you sleeping? Usually somebody with a mental health problem is either sleeping excessively or not sleeping at all. It's at either extreme. Third thing I would ask is, do you argue with other people a lot? Do you have trouble getting along with people compared to how you were when you were working? And sometimes they have trouble admitting it. And usually it's sometimes hard to see things in yourself that other people see in you. I then ask if they have trouble remembering things. If you have a mental health problem, anxiety, depression, it affects your memory. It affects your cognitive ability, your ability to do things in an orderly fashion. And those are the kinds of things I ask right away.
Okay, so I want to
If they
recap this. I want to
if
recap.
they have, well, one other big one that people have
Yep.
is PTSD. And I always ask what happens when they have a PTSD flare up and what causes it. There are some people that if they hear a car driving too fast down the street, it sets off their PTSD.
Yeah.
Other people, if they see somebody slip on the sidewalk, not even falling, it sets off the PTSD. It depends what caused the PTSD that will trigger flare ups of it.
Mhm.
And there's one other one that I have to bring up, and that's panic attacks, which are common and serious. And what causes the panic attack? If I hear a mother yell at a child, I have a panic attack. And I just want to go wring her neck and I want to do this and, whatever. If I see a car drive too fast, I have a panic attack because I was in a bad car accident and speeding gets to me. Whatever it is, what happens when you have a panic attack and how long do they last? And those are important things to find out.
So this is good. So for those of you listening out there, this is kind of a self-assessment piece that you can do if you or know somebody that has like mental health, brain health, and you're wondering if Social Security. So see if I got this right. Treated, right? Professionally
Yes.
treated. If you're sleeping, somebody's sleeping 8 hours a night, then you have to take that into consideration. Getting along with others and remembering things. See, I almost forgot.
Right.
And then what happens? Like, what are the triggers? Like you mentioned some of the triggers. I've worked with people that it's been a garbage truck or when sometimes if they're walking down the street and one of those lights flickers on, that totally did it. So those are some of the things that you can kind of self-assess. This is really good.
There's one other that Social Security looks at, and it's called persistence of pace. And that means how fast do you get things done? Are you working much slower? If you're doing a crossword puzzle, which by the way, I hate crossword puzzles, but if you're doing one and you used to do them in an hour and now it takes you 5 hours, you're doing things slower. If you used to make your sandwich for lunch in 5 minutes and now it takes you 30 minutes, if anything you do takes longer, your persistence of pace is slowed down. That affects your ability to work. If you were in a work setting, you would be working too slow to do the job. So if you find you're doing things much slower, that is also something to look at. And sometimes it's hard to self-evaluate.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need somebody else to do this for you.
Good point. Couple topics before we finish up and go into Q&A here. I want to talk about age, like the over 50. If you could explain to those that are out there, the nuances of education, work history, briefly touch on the grid rules. I don't want to get too techie on people and freak them out, but like how that whole age component fits into the approval process.
Okay, well, once you're over 50, really 49 and a half, they look at your age as an impairment to working. The older you get, the greater the impairment. In my case, if I were to be 55, which I vaguely remember, I could still do a lot of my employment because it's sedentary. It requires me to use my brain, but there's no lifting, there's nothing exertional. They're looking at my past work too. But if you're under 49 and a half and you can lift 10 pounds, they're going to find that you're capable of working unless there's other non-exertional problems. Let's say you have asthma so severe that you can't be in any environment with any smells at all. And you can't go outside because it's smoggy in your city. They might look at that as an impairment to working. But usually, if you can lift 10 pounds and you're under age 50, you're going to be denied benefits unless you have non exertional impairments. As you get older, that changes. If you're 60 years old, you have to be able to lift 50 pounds to be able to work. So it gradually increases. The older you are, the less the restrictions to get disability.
Okay. So that's a general rule. The older you are, the easier, right? The easier
Correct.
restrictions are. Okay. Good. So just a reminder, folks, going to have a Q&A in a few minutes, but here's the next thing that I want to really, if folks out there, I hope you pay attention to this, because I've been doing this work nowhere near as long as Jim, but for 2 decades. And many people approach the process of getting approved and they're not serious about it. Are you familiar with Charles Hall, who has a blog?
Sure.
So
Charles is a good friend of mine.
Oh, okay. I love his work. So he did this piece on the value of a disability benefit. And he did all the math and broke it all down. These are his numbers, not mine. But it's an average benefit package is around $447,000 over the course of a lifetime. And so, but people come to the Social Security process and they take a guess, they get on their benefits, they set it, forget it, and they don't take it seriously. So what I would like, if you could just really kind of dummy it down for everybody and point out some of the top 2-3 mistakes that people make. And at least if we could get a message out there that not to do these things and to take it seriously, we can make a bit of a difference in this area.
Okay, first of all, I'll give you one I just got. The person's past due benefit was $177,000.
Yeah.
And if he stays disabled through retirement age, he'll receive $1,100,000.
How old?
He's young.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But he's young with a high PIA.
Okay. So $1 million deal.
Yeah. And he has some very severe impairments. He would much rather be working.
Yeah, most would.
But the biggest error people make when they're applying for disability is not getting enough medical care. If you're not going to the doctor, Social Security isn't going to believe you're disabled.
Yeah.
And the most disgusting example I have of that is a client of mine with cerebral palsy who couldn't lift his head off his chest, and they cut him off because he didn't have enough medical care. And we got him on easily, but it was
if they didn't have you working on it, I mean, I know this has happened to other people out there. They've been cut off, and it's unless you have the right connections and know what to do, it's hard to get back on.
Well, you've got people at Social Security who are under severe time frames, and they barely have time to look at it. I had a client who was told we're reviewing your case to see if you're still disabled. You have 30 days to get us medical to prove you're still entitled to disability.
Mm-hmm.
She ignored the letter. She then got one saying you didn't respond, you have 10 days. She then got one saying you didn't respond, we'll give you an additional 10 days. And then she didn't respond, so she got a letter saying because you didn't send us proof, you're apparently no longer severely mentally retarded. She had a 66 IQ. She didn't understand the letters. I called the person who sent it and I told him to pull the file and tell me how he cured her. And he thanked me for not going to the newspapers or the television stations, and she didn't miss a check.
Oh, I love it.
But it's the kind of thing where they're looking at medical, they're not looking at people.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, for most conditions, you do need substantial medical care. The other thing that's important is the doctor walks in and always says, "How are you?" And people say, "Fine." Never say fine, because that's the first thing in the doctor's notes is patient's fine. And then you tell them everything that's wrong with you. But the person reading it for Social Security looks at the first word and skips the rest of it. So when the doctor says, "How are you?" say terrible, or say my back is hurting, or tell them what's wrong and why you're there. If you were fine, you wouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
So give them the problems. That's important. The medical care is good. Be compliant with the doctors. I can't tell you how many people have a doctor recommend a medicine and the claimant never gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are a lot of people who can't afford the medicine, and that's understandable. But there are other people who just say, "I don't want to take a medicine. I don't want to try it." And then Social Security says they don't want to try to get better.
So, but Jim, I want to hit the pause button on that one. So if somebody does not want to take a medicine, or they don't want to go to pain management again, because they already went and it made them feel worse, can you provide some directions on how to like address that with your medical records, with your doctor?
They have to ask the doctor, what are the side effects of this medicine? And then if they're afraid of those side effects, say so. Pain management is usually injections. Steroid injections have some serious side effects, and it's legitimate to not want to do that. One of the difficult things I've seen with pain management is a lot of pain management docs are now recommending cannabis, depending on the state you're in. If it's legal in your state, and frankly, it helps a lot of people with their pain, but it's still illegal federally. So, depends on your judge. Some judges think it's fine to take for your pain. I hope it helps. And other judges say you're taking an illegal substance.
Got it.
So that's a difficult one. My funniest was the judge who said to the claimant taking cannabis, "Did you start using drugs when you were in the military?" And my client said yes. And the judge said, "That's when most of us did." I mean, I hear that's when most people started.
Yeah.
And that judge was good to every client I had after that, because I never told anybody he said that.
That's beautiful. Now, I want to add one thing to what you're saying about the going to the doctors and the treatment. I want to remind everybody, as we had discussed earlier in the program, what you do when you go to the doctors makes a big difference. Like understanding your condition and your limitation and effectively communicating that, right? I just want to tighten that up. I actually want to roll it forward. I think everybody that's going to the doctor, if you're out there in this audience and you're listening to somebody, and maybe you're a disability applicant or recipient, but if you know others that are working full time, in my opinion, learning this effective doctoring not only will help you with your treatment because you'll have limitations that you'll be communicating to them. But if, God forbid, you should ever need to go through the process, you'll be in the habit of effective doctoring with limitations. So, thank you for that. I just felt it from a public service announcement standpoint appropriate to do that.
One thing that helps is bring a list of what you want to tell the doctor. Doctors often have a limited amount of time to see you. And if you bring that list and give it to them to put into your file, it's at least there.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get into Q&A, kind of wrapping up our section here today, we've covered a lot. For people that are applying or approving, are there like a few takeaways that you have for tips, like, that they should be doing? We talked about medical care. I just talked about the limitations, but is there anything else that you can think of that would be beneficial?
Yes, the remark section is usually left blank. Under remarks on the application or under an appeal, be verbose. Tell them why you can't work. Tell them what's wrong and why this condition limits your ability to engage in substantial gainful activity. That's your chance to freestyle and
Love
paint
it.
that picture of yourself.
Love it.
It's left blank and it's not. The other thing that's important is the denials are written by AI now.
Oh,
They're made to scare you into thinking that you can't get disability and you'll never get disability and you're wasting time and go back to work because there's nothing wrong with you. Don't give up. Don't think that somebody really reviewed it and wrote that out independently. It's a computer generated denial. But what I tell people who call me is 100% of the people who don't appeal don't get disability.
yeah.
So take your chance. You have nothing to lose by appealing except letting the government keep your money if you don't appeal.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And there's a lot of factors. There's many of good cases I've seen. I fully expect you have that. Yeah, they didn't evaluate it right. So, Jim, question on that. If AI is influencing denials, what about favorable decisions? Are those still done, call it manually?
At initial and recon, they are. At the hearing level, some of the judges are experimenting using AI rating decisions both ways. And some of the decisions are coming out in 2 or 3 weeks. And the ones that come out in 2 or 3 weeks are done by AI, except for a couple judges who always got their decisions out that fast. And they're in the highest rate of denials. But the judges who were taking 6 to 8 weeks and are now getting them out in 2 to 3 weeks are experimenting with AI.
Okay.
It's not changing their approval or denial rate. It's trying to get things done faster. Frankly, the AI decisions I've seen have a lot of nonsensical verbiage in them.
Are they accurate?
When they pay the case.
That's accurate. I love that answer.
No, there's a lot of things in there that don't make sense for the case in question, but AI doesn't understand it. It's putting in the template part, and it's just not paying attention properly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, at least they're making an effort. One last thing, Nadine, why don't you go ahead and you can put the link in, and then Philip will hear from your group if you've got some questions. But one last thing, Jim, before we kind of tighten up this piece, can you speak to credibility and consistency in your communication for all those out there? Get approved, stay approved.
Once you're approved, keep going to the doctor. You're going to get reviewed. And when you get reviewed, one of the things they look at is the medical care you've received. I recommend getting a notebook and write the date of every doctor's appointment and the name of the doctor you saw. And when I say that, I mean include your dentist, your physical therapist, if you went for urgent care. If you're a female, write your obstetrical appointment down. The people doing the reviews in some states have to do 30 a week of the reviews.
Wow.
If you give them 50 handwritten pages attached to the form they send,
You win.
they don't have time to read it. They just say, she's still disabled. I don't have time to read all of this. I'll go on to the next one. So the more you give them, the better. In this notebook, every time you get a new medicine, write the date and the name of the medicine and why you're getting it. Not refills, but changes in prescriptions.
Okay.
And then you're going to have some bad days. You're going to have a day it's hard to get out of the bed, or a day that you argued with everybody, or a day you tried to dust and it hurt so bad that you sat down for 2 hours. Write the date and why it was a bad day. So you're filling up this notebook and you're going to give it to them when they do your review. And it helps on the review, but you still need the medical proof.
Good one. Good one. All right. Let's slide into a Q&A. Nadine, you want to take it over? Oh, you're on mute. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for that very valuable topic and information, Jim, and of course, Brian. So for our Q&A, I've already posted the link for those of you who would like to join us live via Zoom. And there's also a link there with the join instructions to give you more details on how you can join us. So you can either dial in, or you can also join via the Zoom app. All right. So before we get into the questions from the comment, Philip, do you have any questions from your group?
Sure. We got a few here. Excuse me. First one says, is from Harvey. Says, I applied years ago and about to have to reapply. Do they go back and look at the old application too?
They might. It's, have you worked in between when you were denied and the present time? If you have, they're probably not going to look at that old application. If you haven't worked at all, they're going to look at the old application to see if there's any new conditions. If you're exactly the same as you were then, they're probably going to deny you. So you have to show why you're worse.
New diagnoses, increase in severity, that type of stuff.
All right. Anonymous says, I got denied on my appeal and now I can either go to federal or refile. I don't know what to do.
You can do both. If you had a lawyer representing you, find out if your lawyer is going to appeal to federal court for you.
Yeah.
That lawyer can also file a new application when you're in federal court. Federal court's going to take at least, well, we don't know how long federal court's going to take. The Social Security has shut down all of its attorneys who are doing cases in federal court because of the government shutdown. So all of those cases are on hold. The backlog's going to be huge when they are allowed to start working the cases again. But you can start a new application while the federal court appeal is pending. So do both.
Okay. Excuse me. All right. Nadine asks, not our Nadine, but this says, can you put down all the things that's wrong? Like my main would be COPD, but also asthma, depression, etc.
put it all down. If you have a sprained big left toe, put that down. If you've got a broken pinky finger, put it down. Put every medical condition you have down.
Okay. All right. Israel asked, I received the adult function report last week. So now I have another report asking what my job title detailed, any advice, and I read on here that some get these reports and some don't.
You have to fill out the job function report. Be accurate. Now, don't be a hero on this report. Don't make your job more glamorous than it was. I had a client whose job title was assistant manager, but that was just so they didn't have to pay him overtime. All he did was stock shelves in a car parts company. He had nothing to do with opening or closing, with taking care of a customer at the register, with hiring or firing, with ordering. He had no managerial jobs at all. So we put his job title down, but we put what all of his job duties were, and we added a section about what his job duties weren't to show that he wasn't really a manager. So if you have a title that doesn't really describe what your job duties were, make sure you explain that.
All right, another one here from Anonymous says, I have a SSDI orthopedic appointment next week. Any suggestions? Also, a psychiatrist in another month. Suggestions on what the appointment on that appointment.
During the orthopedic appointment, be honest about the test, but make some notes after the exam about what they did. Did the orthopedic surgeon have you bend over, go side to side, twist? Did they touch your back or whatever is being examined to see if there's spasm? Or some of the orthopedic doctors give a 5-minute exam and do nothing, and others give a very thorough exam. But make a note of everything that was done. If you have a lawyer, send those notes to your lawyer right after the exam, so nobody can say you did it after it was a bad exam and your comments aren't true. For the psych exam, again, do it honestly. Make your answers short. Don't be verbose because you don't know what the psychologist is looking for. The one trick question some psychologists use is, you're really doing this because you need the money. And if they ask that, don't answer the question, just talk about how bad you feel and you wish you could be better and be back to work. And if they bring it up again, give the same answer, because some of the psychologists say people have compensation neurosis and they're only filing for disability because they want money, not because anything's wrong with them. And you want to not answer that question. You do want the money. You need the money because you're not working, but you don't want to say yes to that question. You just want to talk about how bad you feel and how you'd rather be working because you miss working, you miss the job, and don't answer that question.
Good point.
All right, this is going to be the last one from my group today. Rick says, I was in a car accident 2.5 years ago and approved for disability 1 year ago. Last November, we finally signed the settlement offer from the car accident. This week. This won't affect my disability, right? The money I am being rewarded was for severe injuries, lost wages, pain and suffering, etc. I just want to be sure.
If you're getting Social Security disability, it won't have any effect on it. If you're getting SSI, it will affect it. Since you said it covered lost wages, you're probably getting disability, so it shouldn't have any effect on it.
Yeah. Yep. Great. That's
All
it
right.
from San Francisco, huh?
That's it from San Francisco.
All right. Thank you so much, Philip, for asking those questions. Now, while we wait for someone to join us live, I do have a couple of questions listed here from the comments from our live audience. So here's one from Greg Barney. Is there any way to find out when your CDR date is? I worry about it getting lost in the mail.
Don't worry about your CDR getting lost. If it gets lost, I'll send you another one. But there are some people, because of the severity of their disability, who never get a CDR. People who are getting disability for a mental condition are more likely to get CDRs. I would not push them to ask for one, though, because if they forget to send you one, they're just going to keep paying you. So don't worry.
Yeah.
Next question from Bailey Rose. If I'm 65, can I switch from SSDI to regular Social Security? If so, what is the process?
It automatically rolls into your Social Security retirement. You don't have to do anything. It just happens.
Just happens. Is it possible that the amount of check would change, or is it just gonna stay the same and, they're just
The
changing the
amount stays the
title?
same.
Yeah.
All right, next question here from A1 is Rising or Anonymous. If one is under hospice supervision, and if one was to be able to get out by getting a little healthier, but still disabled, should they worry about should they worry about SSDI getting cut off or a CDR?
It again depends on their age. But if they were under hospice and they're a little bit better, I wouldn't worry too much, as long as they're still getting regular medical care for the condition.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Next from Anne Finley. How do SSA view disabled adult child who never had any type of job?
Who never had any time. I missed
Any type of job. Never had any job.
They're usually going to look at them the same as they would look at any disabled person. And they might be doing a CDR at some point. It depends what the condition is. I know some disabled adult children with severe autism who are never going to get reviewed. I know some disabled adult children with depression who are going to get reviewed. So it depends on the condition.
Next question is, it says, hi, quick question. I had my hearing this month and my attorney didn't really cross-exam the vocational expert. I think she only asked her one question, and I was just wondering, why was that?
I wasn't there, so I can't answer. I have sometimes asked no questions. The most I ever asked was 36 questions, although once I was prepared to ask 400 questions, and the judge asked, how many questions are you going to ask? And I told them, and he said, I'm going to agree that the vocational witness will say she can't work to every one of your questions. So don't ask them. And it depends on what the answers were, if the answers are good enough to the judge's questions, I wouldn't even bother answering a question. On my hearing this morning, I had 3 or 4 questions for the vocational witness because she found a job my client could do with an 8th grade education that required the use of a computer. And I wanted to know how many 8th grade education people she had gotten jobs with computers. And she said she can't remember. She's been doing this job too long. And I asked if she'd gotten anybody one, and she said probably, but I can't remember.
Probably.
Which was a nice way of saying no. But
Yeah.
and the judge said, your point is made, move on. So, and I had no more questions after that. So the amount of questions isn't as important as what are the answers you got.
Okay, next question here is from Vanna Frazier. I have all supporting neuroscience and medical documentation. Will I be approved?
It depends what's wrong with you. It depends on your age. If you're 40 and you have a lot of documentation, you might get denied. And with that same documentation, you might get approved at age 55. So it again depends on the conditions you have, the severity of those conditions, what your past relevant work was, what your education was. So there's a lot of other conditions to consider.
Next question from Her Majesty. How likely will one get a CDR once past 60? I got approved in 2021 with disability date on December 2019. When I got approved in 2021, I was 55, and my award letter said I would be reviewed in 5 to 7 years.
Once you're 60, you're not going to get reviewed again.
All right, next question. Hello, I was approved for expedited reinstatement back in March, and I will have another trial work period after 24 months. Do you know when my next CDR will be? We do have a lot of questions about CDR.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, the trial work period, you're allowed to work to earn over substantial gainful activity level 9 months out of 60 months. So if you've had in the last 48 months, 9 months that you've earned over the amount each year that they set, you can't have a trial work period now.
Yep.
So trial work periods are tricky. It's a rolling 60-month period. So if some of those months were 65 or 70 months ago, you may have a few months that you could work now. But you have to look and see when you had a trial work period. If you've never had one, you have 9 months that you can try to work. But I have had a lot of people come to me with overpayments because they misconstrued the trial work period and went over for 11 or 12 months, and Social Security then cut them off completely for every month after that period, which gave overpayments of $70,000 to $100,000.
Yeah. You do not want that.
Right. Okay, next question. What if doctors for your condition are so far away that it causes a financial burden and physically unable to travel that far?
Good question.
That's a great question and a great problem. Um, there was a judge I knew who was sent to Florida to be a judge, and a lot of her hearings were for people in southern Alabama, where there was one doctor per county. And she had come from a metropolitan area where there were a lot of doctors. And I told her to take a ride through southern Alabama to see that these people were telling the truth. And once she drove through southern Alabama and saw that some people lived 50, 60 miles from the closest doctor, she began to see how difficult it was to get medical care. In reality, the Social Security system doesn't care. And you can have virtual visits, although under the new big, beautiful bill, virtual visits aren't as available as they were. A lot of areas, I know in Eastern Oregon, a lot of doctors have branch offices that are run by PAs and nurse practitioners who can see you. That's not available everywhere. Some states don't permit it. But if you don't have medical care, if you go to your doctor as often as you can, and you explain that this was all I could afford to go, and your condition is serious, that's sometimes enough, but it's going to depend on the judge.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
All right,
So-
next question. Oh yeah, sorry, Brian. You're
Continue,
gonna say
please.
something.
No,
Oh, yeah.
continue.
So next question. How do I find out if my original ALJ has retired? My claim has been appealed with the federal court. I looked up the judge's disposition, and he's not listed in the city and state as before.
I don't know that for sure, but you could call that hearing office and ask if he's still there.
That is the last question in my bucket, Brian.
Great.
And nobody's called in today?
No, they're
Nobody's called
shy.
in.
They're shy. Before we wrap up, Jim, I would like to get your perspective on how the shutdown has influenced like workflow for you or others that you've been networking with, or has it?
Well, federal court is shut down. There are some OGC attorneys working at the appeals council.
Okay.
So the appeals council has a huge backlog, and they're helping get rid of the backlog there. As far as getting help on certain parts of the cases, if there's a problem looking at a file, like I was having problem with a case I have next week in seeing the file, and there's nobody to help me look at that file.
Yeah.
So that hearing is going to get continued because I can't see the file before the hearing. The rule that they put out said if a representative calls about a case, they have to talk to us. Some of the people working for Social Security think the rule says they only talk to claimants, not representatives, and they won't talk to us. And then we have to get to a supervisor to tell them what the rule is. So they've made things more difficult that way. One person at Social Security said they're not getting paid. It's my understanding that all of the Social Security people are still getting paid because their pay comes from the Social Security fund, not from the general fund of Social Security. Something I heard as a possibility, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that they may borrow money from the Social Security fund to pay the troops.
Ooh.
Since they don't have enough money to pay the troops.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I can be sure of is everybody at Social Security and everybody in America is unhappy right now. And if you're a Republican, you're unhappy because of what the Democrats are doing. And if you're a Democrat, you're unhappy because of what the Republicans are doing. So we have bipartisan unhappiness because of politics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as bad as it's ever been. And what they ought to do is not pay the people in Congress because they're not working.
Yeah, well said. But just for those that are out there, maybe you're thinking about applying, you can still submit an application. That process seems to still be flowing. Now,
But there are certain things you can only do online or go in the office and make an appointment, which they'll schedule 3 or 4 months from now.
okay, yeah.
So, like if you need to change your bank account number, you have to go into the office to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't cancel a bank account and think your new checks are going to go into a new account number.
Good tip.
Yes, make sure your new account is open and the money's going into there before you cancel your old account.
No time to be changing accounts. That's a
Right.
good.
Now, I recommend to everybody, even if you're not getting disability, that you create a Social Security account at ssa.gov and you look at your earnings, because they're wrong 0.5% of the time. That's not much unless it's you.
And it's not in your favor.
Right.
Yeah.
There are some employers who take money out of your check but don't send it to Social Security or report it.
Mm-hmm.
If that were the case, you want to get that fixed. So look at your account and see if it's accurate, see if it's you. It can be especially troublesome for women who change their names when they get married. So ssa.gov, open an account. It's scary to see how much Social Security knows about your background and the questions they ask before you can open an account, but you should do it.
Okay. Good tip. Good tip. Well, as we wrap up here today at the beginning of the program, Attorney Brown mentioned that you have been in this work because you enjoy getting hugs. So all of you out there, and you can send over a virtual hug for thanking Jim for participating in today's event. And you mentioned that both sides of the aisle are unhappy, but I'm happy that you're here. This has been a great event. So for those of you out there, I hope you got the message today about how to get approved, stay approved, the key items to do it. If you know somebody that would benefit from this, we would value it if you would share the message, help make a difference. And I just want to also be very candid with folks. We do these events on Wednesdays. We have other videos and content that we put out, but this is not the end all end all. You listen to us for, I don't know, maybe an hour or so today, but if you are serious about getting and keeping your benefits, we encourage you to get involved as a member. There's no cost. Nadine will put a link in the show notes here, and come join us, fill out your profile, and that gets you access to wonderful advocates that we have here. They can help you understand what your situation is, how to communicate to your doctors, whether you have a viability of getting approved or not, and get you into a disability approval course. Or if you're already approved, we can get you into the course I mentioned at the top of the program, that CDR and how to survive it. So that's how we can help you further. Again, thank you, Attorney Brown, Nadine,
Thank
Philip.
you. If you celebrate Halloween, stay safe.
Yes, as well. And we look forward to having you back for our next topic. Always a pleasure to have you here. So
Couple months, I'll be here.
make it a great day, everybody. God bless. Be safe.
See ya.
Bye now.
Bye.